everybody, and good evening. This is the Ake Arts and Book Festival 2022, and my name is Kadaria Ahmed, and I'm going to be in conversation with Mr. Tunde Onakoya. His little profile is on the program, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking at all about his background, and we dive straight into it. I'm also hoping that we'll get an opportunity to actually get as much engagement from the audience as possible. So I'd really like us to start from the very beginning. Chess is such an elitist game in many ways. At what point did you have the light bulb moment when you thought, actually, this is a game that I can use among people who are not as privileged and do something good with it? How did that, start?
All right, thank you very much, ma'am. So yeah, to just give some context to my personal story and my connection to the project I currently do. I'm a national master of chess, and I also thank you. I also grew up in the slum, so I think that pain point, that connection to that pain point, that was the genesis of it. So. I grew up in a place in Ikorodu. Is there anyone else from Ikorodu here?
No, sorry.
Nobody? Okay. Nobody from the trenches?
No. There are many trenches, not only in Ikorodu. Anybody from the trenches?
Okay, good. Ikorodu is the trenches of trenches.
Okay.
But all right, so I grew up in Ikorodu, and Ikorodu is a place in Lagos, for those people that are not from Lagos. So as far back as I remember, I think I was 10. So I had just completed my primary school education. And after my primary school education, I had to drop out of school for 2 years. Because at the time, my dad had this Moloe bus. But then the government just woke up one day and just banned it. And that was just the end. And so they couldn't afford to pay my tuition to school. So I had to drop out of school so my younger brother could go to school. And I had to learn something to support the family. So I remember I was learning how to fix phones. And there was this barber shop not too far from where I lived. We used to go there to play video games, PlayStation 1. And I just walked in there one of these days. And I was just watching the other, boys playing. And the barber just brought out a small plastic chess set. And I'd never seen a chessboard before in my life. That was the first time. But then I was curious because for me, it was love at first sight. I was just fascinated by the way the pieces were carved. And I just wanted to know what it was. And he told me, oh, this is chess. It's a game for smart people. And I told him to teach me. And he said, no, I was too young, that I could just watch. So I just kept watching. And it seemed almost crazy to me because the way the man would bring out a chessboard, bring out a book, it would almost seem like it was crazy, like he was talking to himself. He was doing all this analysis in his head.
Oh, he was playing with himself.
Yeah, he was playing with himself.
Right.
And it was confusing for me because, it's like, what's this man doing? But then he would spend a lot of time just doing that. So whenever I asked, it would be like, oh, I'm studying something, I'm trying to remember a variation. But it was always fascinating to watch. And by just watching, sometimes his friends would come around and they would play. And by watching, I was able to pick up the rules of the game. And that was how I learned how to play chess.
What was the duration of time from the time you sort of first sighted a chessboard and thought, this looks interesting, to sort of actually getting your hands on it and trying to play?
A month.
Okay.
But they wouldn't let me play, because, they didn't even know I could play. I just kept watching. I had understood the rules by watching them. I didn't have a chessboard at home, so it was impossible for me to practice. By watching, I already knew how to play, but they didn't give me an opportunity to play with them because they were master players, right? So, but I learned, I had the knowledge, the basic knowledge of like how all the pieces moved, the board coordinates and everything else. So I would just watch them play and listen to, the intricate details of their strategy. So I just learned by watching, and that was it.
Well, and I mean, okay, you went from watching them to playing to winning competitions yourself. What did it do for you that made you think, actually, if I replicate this in other areas where people are not too affluent, I will do something different and do something good?
So after I learned how to play, by some miracle, I was able to get back to school. And this was because of a beautiful sacrifice by my mom. She just went to one private school and told them that, listen, I'll work here as a cleaner, right? Just let my kid come to school here. And because she was a non-teaching staff, I only had to pay 50%, of tuition. And my mom never took salary in the 6 years that I was in secondary school. So everything just went into paying my school fees. So that was how I was able to get back to school. So fortunately, the school I attended, they actually had chess as a subject. Wow. I think the owner of the school was the ambassador to Kenya, or UN ambassador to Kenya. So he played chess competitively. He had this foundation that organized chess tournaments every year. So chess was compulsory in our school because of that. So but when I joined, I already knew how to play, and with time, my coach saw that I was very talented. In summary, chess helped me see the world differently. And you can imagine, as a kid that grew up in a small place, a lot of my understanding was limited to the confines of where I grew up. But chess gave me a way to see the world beyond those confines, right? I went out. I remember the first time I came to the island, was for a tournament, and I met other kids from other schools. And it just expanded my understanding of what was possible. So chess changed my life, in essence. And I went to school, I went on to college, I won a lot of tournaments. I went to college on a scholarship because I was on the chess team. I was ranked one of the top players in Nigeria. I got my national master title. By the time I was done with college in 2015, I had to go back home to Ikorodu. And it was like after school shields you from, the world out there. I had to start all over again because I knew that playing chess professionally in Nigeria wasn't going to put food on the table. If I wanted to get my grandmaster title, I had to travel to Europe and compete, but there wasn't money for that. So I decided to go back home. I wanted to look for a job, but there was nothing. So I decided to start my own company to teach chess in private schools, because I realized something in my journey that a lot of people think chess is just a board game, but it's an incredible educational resource, right? A lot of developed countries actually have it as a part of their curriculum. So I wanted to do the same thing here in Nigeria. So I did that for 3 years, but it didn't work out because I was still pretty young, and a lot of the school owners didn't understand why chess should be a part of the curriculum.
And like people like me who can't play it, exactly the same thing. I mean, it's a very intellectual game in many ways. So I hear you when you say it expanded your mind, it allowed you to travel, meet different people. But in terms of schooling and sort of the specific skills that it teaches, what is it that chess does if it is put as part of a curriculum of a school? Because I'm trying to understand what it would have done for your kids in the slum when we start talking about them,
Yeah, I mean, that is why this backstory is important, because chess, beyond just being a game, like I said, it's an important educational resource because it helps develop cognitive skills,
right,
especially for young people, for children. Critical thinking, creativity, spatial reasoning, and a lot of those things. Like empirical research, has proven this time and time again. That is why in countries like Russia, some parts of China, even in New York, chess is a compulsory part of the curriculum because it creates an opportunity for children to get to learn not what to think, but how to think for themselves. And, for us here in Nigeria, education is just, go to school, get your certification. But I believe beyond the four walls of a classroom, I believe education is the capacity for thought, for independent thought, for critical thought. Yes. So chess is education for the mind of a child because it's still in those formative years. And if you give them something like chess, they begin to learn how to think critically, right? So that was what I understood. That was my own journey. Chess gave me an education. So I wanted to do the same thing for children. at that stage. That was why I started. So after 3 years of working with schools, I used to live in Ikorodu, come to the island here and there. I even taught in schools as far as Abeokuta, but I was just earning very little money. And, Sakma was dealing with me then, so I decided to just give it up, man. I need to jackpot from this country, and just find my way. So I gave up on chess. I wanted to take I did computer science, another degree, and just leave the country.
So you started looking for an exit?
Yes, so,
okay.
I completely exited. I gave up on my career and teaching chess. But then something happened in 2018. I shared some of that, yesterday on Twitter. But what really happened was, I remember on one of those days, after church, I used to play piano in church. Some of my guys, they would go to this slum community, not too far from where I grew up in Ikorodu, to smoke. And on that day, I decided to just go with them. So I would just sit down there and just watch. And, it was the kind of slum ghetto area where you'd see children smoking too and drinking and all of that. Then I just had that moment, that epiphany, where it just occurred to me that these children would never get to understand success outside this place. Maybe success to them would look like a Yahoo boy in their community and Egbo, maybe buying Benz or using an iPhone. They would never get to know that, the opportunities that exist in this vast universe, the internet. And that could have been me, because a lot of the young people that we grew up together ended up like this. But then chess gave me a lifeline. So I just thought, since I was like practically jobless now, and I was looking for a way to escape this wayward country at the time. That was how I thought about it, sir. I could come and teach these kids and just engage them. I didn't know how it was going to put food on their table. But one thing that struck out for me was it was going to give them an intellectual identity.
Tell me what that first day was like. You carry a chessboard and you walk into a community where, by your description, people are drinking, smoking, the young people, that's what occupies them. So what do you do? Did you just show up and say to them, listen, I'm going to teach you something? Did you work with sort of leaders of gangs, community leaders? How did it happen? I'm trying to understand the specifics of, especially that first time.
Okay, so one of the guys that, I didn't smoke anyway, I don't smoke. But
are you sure?
So one of the guys that used to smoke then, I think his name is Smile. So with my guys I think the guy that played the guitar, I was very close friends with him. So he just told him. So when I started telling my guys, after we left there on that day, I just told him, his name is Freedom. Freedom, why don't we just come back here and start teaching these kids chess? One of them could become a champion, and that could just change everything for him. And he was like, yeah, they would talk to Smile. So he just told Smile that I wanted to come back the following week, while they were smoking, that we could just arrange some of those kids. And, they were not in school. And the kids were really young, 10, 11, 12. And so Smile was like, no wala. So the next time we came, so I had this few, about 2 or 3 chessboards, at home. So he just called, like, Wasiu, Wawambi, Wajoko. So he just called like 5 of them. And they sat down. And I didn't even know what to do, because, I had taught children chess, for 3 years. But these were children that couldn't even speak English. That had I think 2 of them had never even been to school before. So how do you teach a child that has never seen the 4 walls of a classroom before, that a rook moves vertically and horizontally? So that was when it dawned on me that I wasn't even prepared for this. But something happened on that day. As I just set the chessboard on the floor, I pulled up my demo board, and I told them something that in Yoruba, that the reason why they're here is because their parents made certain choices or didn't have certain options. But then they're here to learn to make their own choices and make their own options in Yoruba. And through gesticulations and, they were able to get it. And in all my 3 years of teaching rich kids in private schools, I'd never seen kids learn at such incredible pace before. Something that took me like months to learn. They learned it on that same day. They learned the board coordinates. They learned opening theory on just that same day. And it just occurred to me that these are kids that don't even speak English. And chess, in all its complexity, that intellectual touchstone of intellect, that game, prestigious game, that you think it's an elite game. They were able to gain mastery of it in just one class. And
that's pretty incredible.
yes, and that is potential, right? And there's all this talk about Africa having potential, but then potential is nothing if it's not realized, right? So it just dawned on me that these kids had incredible potential that the world wasn't paying attention to, right? And I saw an opportunity to help them find expression, because what I had given them was a new way to express themselves. Poverty has already chosen another script where they get into drugs and all of that. But through chess, they found a new way to express themselves, right? And that was it. So that just did it for me. It was supposed to be like a 1 day or 1 week thing. But from there, I just kept coming back. I kept teaching them, and 5 became 10, and 20, then 100, and that was how it started.
Yes. That's pretty incredible. At which point did you realize that this is actually becoming a thing, and I need to now put a structure around it in a way that enables me to, if you like, almost institutionalize what I'm doing, and also be able to then take it to other communities beyond that first place where you started? And what was that like? Did you get any help from anybody? Any corporates come on board? I'm just trying to understand that journey from that to where you are today.
Okay, so, because it was just a passion project, right? I believe what it means to be a true intellectual, is that unsatiable desire for knowledge, that yearning for knowledge, right?
But you also sound like you enjoyed being respected.
Yes, I did, because people judged me based on that premise. They didn't even know whether I went to school, I went to university, or I had any degree, right? So, like I said, while I didn't know how chess was going to put food on the table of a poor child in the slums, I knew it was going to give them an identity where people would judge them not because of what they look like or their background, but because of what they have the ability to do. And I think this is what everyone deserves, that chance to be judged based on that premise, not because of your skin color or your background, right? So with time, the kids got really good, and I'm saying really good in just 3 months of training. They learned what would take maybe a master a year. They became really good. So I remember taking them for a tournament. It was still a passion project, by the way. And they won the tournament, first to like 6th. They beat everybody, all the rich kids from the rich schools. They beat all of them. And that was it. And I just thought, okay, this should not just be a side project anymore. Let us give this a name. So we gave it Chess in Slums. We now had one event that December in 2018. So we invited people like you to the community, to the slum, to come learn how to play chess from the children themselves. So we themed it Chess Beyond Borders. So just that connection between the children, the people they wanted to be like. You see children saying, I want to be a doctor, but they've never seen a doctor before. Right? So we invited people like that. I remember my friend, Tosin Oshinowo, that designed Maryland Mall. She came there for the first time. A little girl taught her how to play it. So that connection was established. I think the BBC saw that post on Tosin's Instagram, and they made a documentary about our project. Then we started getting mails from people in the US and UK that they wanted to volunteer, donate. I didn't know what all of that meant. So that was when I knew that it was time to build, competence and capacity. I started learning about NGOs. I didn't know anything about all of that.
I was about to actually ask.
So that was how it all started.
Yeah, when I was sort of just Googling now, there was a very interesting movie that was made about chess in a slum in Uganda, about a young lady that became a chess champion. I think it's called Queen of Katwe.
Queen
I was
of
trying
Katwe,
to,
yes.
get the name. And at that point, had you sort of come in contact with this story? Had you sort of read and seen what chess had done in other places? Or is this something that you found out about much later after you'd set up your own things?
No. I watched Queen of Katwe in 2016. Right. And I've seen it 12 times after that.
Oh, fantastic.
When you've just always had this idea, because 2016 I was already a teacher, teaching chess actively, and I knew the power it had, for children. So you see, when you now watch something and you feel so validated, like, look at this,
yes.
Right? So that was what Queen of Katwe did for me. I remember even sending the coach a message on Facebook, Robert Katende, that, my name is Tunde, I'm so inspired by your story. Can I please help in any capacity? So I already had the thought to do something like that. I was already doing it in a small scale, but then Queen of Katwe just validated everything that I wanted to do, that I wanted to become, that I wanted to see become for the children, right? So Queen of Katwe is that one movie that, I mean, when I watched it in the cinema, when everyone left, I was just standing there like this. You know, it's such a beautiful movie about that girl, you know. And I mean, now I'm friends with Fiona Mutesi, the character from the slums of Uganda. She has changed her life. And now she works at Microsoft, you know. So it's always that story that look at Fiona, you can also be like her.
So let's talk about your kids. How many have you taken through this program so far? And I know you are not, you do have a favorite, I'm sure, but I don't want to put you on the spot to say you must tell me. But can you tell me maybe one or two of the most astonishing children that you've worked with and what it is about them that you find really special? I want to, you know, we talk about these kids, but I want to sort of, it's important we hear their individual stories. They're not just numbers of children in slums that are learning chess. You know, I like personal stories.
Yes. I agree. And for people that follow me on Twitter, you know that this is a very hard question for me to answer because, you know, there's so many beautiful stories, so many beautiful children that I've met. You know, we've reached over 5,000 children now. But there's this one story that comes to mind right now. It's the story of this little boy called Ferdinand that we met, I think this was last year, April, in Makoko. So Makoko is the largest floating slum in the world, and we were in Ikorodu for 3 years, between 2018 to last year, April. So we decided to scale to another community. So when we got to Makoko, for me, that was my first time. And I'd always seen videos, and, you know, some people call it poverty porn. People go there, photo optics, tokenism, and so it didn't feel right to me that people would just go there and just tell the sad stories about this place without doing anything substantial to help them. So I decided that we're going to go there and we're going to do something different, right? So we got there, and I couldn't just believe that people could live in a place like this. I mean, for someone that grew up in the trenches, to see another trenches and just be surprised, that was how Makoko was. Yeah. So the way we operate, like we select 100 children, we run a pilot phase. So the selection process is always really hard because there are a lot of children there, and we don't have resources for everyone. So we do a vulnerability assessment, you know, for 100 kids and pick the ones, you know, that are most disadvantaged. So we had selected the 100 kids we wanted to work with. When the next day, we already started training them. Then I saw this little boy just hanging around outside, and you know, so I asked him to come in. So I was like, "What's your name?" He didn't respond. I saw he was trying hard, but he couldn't talk. So one of the kids now came and I was like, this one, Dodoyo. So Dodoyo means imbecile in their own language, you know. So I was like, stop, don't do that. So I now called him, you know. He couldn't speak. So I got to learn later that I was living, you know, a mild form of cerebral palsy. Right. And the way he walked, and so the other kids in the community would bully him, you know, because of that. So, but, you know, I saw that on his face. So I gave him, I was wearing this red glass, so I gave it to him. And I just saw him smile for the first time. And I told him to join one of the classes. So he just joined, and, you know, I was supervising. So after about an hour, the instructor for that class just came to me, and I saw the guy crying. I'm like, what's wrong, Samuel? He said, come and see something. And he just took me to where the kids were learning. And he just told me to watch the same boy I just brought, Ferdinand. And he wasn't even part of the previous class, you know, but, you know, he was performing better than everyone else in that class. You know, and that was a boy living with cerebral palsy. And I just kept watching. You know, I just taught them how to arrange the pieces and we taught them the pawn fight, the role of the pawn promotion, and he beat everybody, you know. And I just looked at his face, and I saw the way his eyes lit up, like a boy who had found something that he was good at, you know. And we kept paying attention, we trained them. So we did something in Makoko that I believe no one else had ever done before prior to that time. So the way we do our programs, after the training phase, we now do a tournament for them to test their knowledge and to just let them compete.
Against each other.
Yes, to help them understand that there's always a reward for hard work. Then, so what we did was we made 3-piece suits for all the children that we trained because we wanted to change the world's perception of like children in the slums. You know, because people go to the slums in Makoko and like, oh, these people are suffering and blah, blah, blah. Even when you think about it, if you close your eyes and you try to imagine a picture of a child suffering in poverty, what comes to mind is maybe a child that is malnourished and tattered clothes. So we wanted to change the world's perception of that. So we made 3-piece suits for all the
As
children.
in Oyibo's 3-piece suit.
Yes.
Or our type of 3-piece
Yes.
suit. In the heat of Makoko.
You can see the pictures, and you won't believe that these children were from Makoko. You know, they looked all dapper. They looked so good. The girls made this very nice dress that the Queen's Gambit, from the Queen's Gambit series. And it was just beautiful. And they competed. And guess who won the tournament?
Ferdinand.
And oh God, you know, everybody there cried so much. His mother was so proud because she would tell me how he would always come home crying every day because the other kids, he would try to go play with the other kids, but they would abuse him and would come home crying. And this boy doesn't speak.
So where is Ferdinand now? And what is he up to?
So after the tournament, I remember sharing the story and it went viral. Like I got at least 1,000 emails from people from all over the world that had, you know, kids, you know, that were, I wouldn't even say disabled, differently abled, right? That they were inspired by Ferdinand's story. And even the governor of Lagos State called me and like, oh, I saw the story. Can you bring the boy? I play chess. I would like to play against him. And I just took him, you know, even though I'm not really a big fan like that, I took him to the governor's office. Please don't record that. And
Too late.
and when we got there, he sat down and they played a match for about 45 minutes. And this is a boy that just learned chess like 3 months ago, and the governor has been playing chess all his life. And the match ended up in a draw, although the boy was winning, but don't record that too. And the match ended in a draw, and I saw the governor's face. He just went into his room and brought out ₦1 million and gave it to him. And then the governor has been supporting the scholarship. They put him in school. He had never been to school before. The governor supports not just his own school fees, but all his other siblings, you know. And that just changed his life on that day. And he called me and was like, Tunde, this boy, take care of him. He's a gifted kid. And if he ever needs anything, just let me know.
Okay,
right?
so that's a really inspirational story and very heartwarming. Are you getting the sort of support you need to sort of expand and maybe go into other communities so that you can find more Ferdinands? Are people receptive? Are corporates receptive? What are the sort of challenges, if any, that you're facing in putting, you know, and continuing this program?
I would say it has gotten easier now because a year ago I became very popular on Twitter. So we did another project and it just went viral and I became popular. So we have a lot of partners now, you know, Lufthansa Airlines, some of the tech companies, PiggyVest, you know, so we've gotten some support from them. But the majority of the funding that we've gotten has been from people that have donated. Individuals, right. Yes. We have a GoFundMe page and people that have actually supported over time. And one thing I'm starting to learn, you know, on this journey is if you want to change the world, you need to figure out how to pay for it. And for the longest time, I struggled with this relationship with money because, you know, you're asking people for money. It's like you're begging them to help. It's not like you're giving them equity in something. Like, oh, hey, yeah, charity, take. You know, I struggled a lot with that because I don't want to ever ask anyone for money because it's not for me, it's for the project. So I'm just learning to really change my relationship with the ask to know that before we can really change something at scale, we have to find a way to pay for it. So I'm just at that phase where we're trying to get more institutional funding. We've never gotten any grants. We've never applied for any grants. That was intentional because we wanted to first understand what model works. it's easy to just use buzzwords like impact, but it took us 4 years to get here. But going forward, definitely.
And what is, if you like, the dream? What is the goal? Because, you started out, it sounds like, with very modest intentions. You saw kids in a slum not doing anything, and you decided, you know what, I can help them, I can expand their mind. Obviously, this has now gotten bigger than that. So, having seen what is possible, what is the ultimate dream for this particular program? I know you're doing other projects, and I want to sort of spend a bit of time talking about them, but for this particular project, what's the ultimate?
My vision for the Chess and Slums project, is to reach 1 million children across slum communities in Africa.
1 million children, right?
Give them the gift of chess. Right. Because if you give them the gift of chess, you've given them the gift of lifelong learning. We also have a scholarship support, program as part of our programs for the kids, right? But if we can get 1 million children across Africa to start playing chess, to start learning, we've given them the gift of critical thinking. And that is my vision for the African child. Not one that just focuses on, poverty, the things they don't have, the lack, and blah, blah, blah. But one that instead spotlights their potential. Right? There's this, let me use a quick analogy from chess. So there's this rule in chess where the pawn, the least valuable piece, it has just 1 point. The queen is the most powerful piece on the chessboard, the value of 9. Just like the way our women are very powerful. And if that pawn matches all the way to the final rank, it becomes the most powerful. So in chess, the small one can become the big one. So, that, really tells the true essence of what the Chess and Slums project is trying to do, right? To show that, these children can truly become powerful, that they have this innate capacity that needs to be brought to light. So I think chess is a low cost, low entry barrier tool with a very powerful impact to be able to achieve this beyond just giving handouts and all of that. So that is our vision for Chess and Slums, to reach 1 million children.
Across the continent. Your Pan-African vision is very similar to how our good friend Lola started with Ake, which has now become the place on the continent for books and literature.
I'm a big fan, by the way.
And the arts. And so my question is, she sort of successfully managed to create, if you like, a Pan-African family that supports the arts, that supports literacy across the continent. This is the 10th year of Ake, but I'm just wondering whether you've started reaching out and whether there are any collaborations that are already on the way with others across the continent, particularly given that we've seen what chess can do in other communities. I'm using the example of the Queen of Katwe, what we saw happen in Uganda.
Definitely, and a lot of the things we've done recently has just been like leveraging partnerships and collaborations. We've worked with a lot of organizations. There was even this program we did where we organized like coding for the children in Oshodi Under Bridge, where they got to learn how to code, create their own website using CSS and HTML. So we've done a lot of that. Right, and I think one thing going forward, right, is we need to maintain chess as our focal point, right? But that's just our own vertical, right? But we need to also find those important points of synergy. How chess can relate to art, for example, to culture, and so we've done a lot of this in the past, right, with people. I believe we are championing something that is still very novel. Right, but with time, it will become clear where we can find more opportunities to work with other people in the most meaningful way.
And I'm going to wrap up very soon because I'm sure people have questions. But, part of the frustration of being a Nigerian, living in Nigeria, and this may apply to a certain extent to other African countries, is that you see individuals such as yourself really doing astonishing things that are sort of practically, in real terms, changing people's lives. But we all know that the kind of scale that we need to transform the continent lies in the hand of policymakers, people in government, because they're the ones with the capacity to do things that, like I said, can transform countries and even the whole continent. You made a small comment about not being a fan earlier. So I'm just wondering whether you get frustrated at all by what is going on in the political space and with governance, given the fact that in many ways, people like you, people like Lola, people who are sort of doing individual things, music industry in Nigeria, Nollywood, nobody seems to get any sort of support, from institutions that should support them. People are just, bloody-minded, and they keep at it. And I wonder whether this is something that you've experienced and acknowledged, and what it does to you in terms of just the way you approach these things.
I was not a fan before, but now, after Ferdinand's experience, I think it's okay, I'm an okay guy. But anyway, I try not to think too much about Nigerian politics and, government right now, because, it could be very infuriating because there are a lot of gaps, and these things have consequences, right? A lot of us might not really understand how deeply rooted it is, all those infrastructural, systemic failures, because in some way, we are all shielded by our own privilege, right? But the ones that bear the most brunt of this are those people that live in those slums. When they say Nigeria, 120 million people are in multidimensional poverty, these are not just numbers. This is not just a random survey. These are actual lives. And that failure will be efforts. And it's something with time, the river would overflow and I won't be able to deal with it, right? And I think in that, the way that has kind of like influenced, the lens in which I now view the work I do. Because before it used to be, okay, individual heroics, Tunde. But with time I got to understand that would never be sustainable, to not be scalable, right? Beyond individual heroics, we have to really start to look at our problems from a systems point of view. How do we create important pipelines? How do we make sure we can build systems that will take one solution and be able to scale it across board? So I think in our politics, we are just looking for one hero. This hero identity politics, but it just doesn't work. The only way we can solve any problem, at least at the scale at which Nigeria needs it right now, is to be able to build important systems. And for me, I've chosen my own mountain. The government...
And it's one you will die on.
Yes, it's one I will die on, because I know that it is fundamental to the growth and development of our country, right, to be able to educate children and give them a path, right? The government has reached out to us a couple of times, even the vice president has shown support, even posted one of our videos on his Instagram. I see a lot of politicians follow me, some of the people that are competing for president, like 2 of them followed me recently. And, but me, right now, I'm apolitical. I don't want to get involved in any politics. I believe maybe the greatest show of my own democracy is volunteering every day. Every day, I mean, for the voting, for the election, you only go there and vote once. But then when you volunteer, you do work like this. Every day you're voting for the kind of future you want to see. And right now, that is more important to me.
So 2 final questions. One is, I understand you started a new project that's dealing specifically with young girls. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it. And if you could tell me what your mom is up to now, and watching you do the things that you do, given the sacrifices that she made for you to go to school. Is she in any shape or form involved in what you're doing? Is she thrilled? What does she think about you now when she looks at you and your success?
Yakupa. I love her so much. And, there's nothing I would ever do for her that would be enough. At first, she didn't understand why a 23-year-old would decide that this charity that I wanted to do with his life after everything that we have been through, right? Because in my own family, if you are not a doctor, you're already a failure. So after you didn't even now end up as a doctor, you're now saying what you want to do is charity. So at first, it was very confusing for them, and they felt really bad about it. But I mean, now, things are different now. And I remember sometime my dad called me, was like, oh, you saw my picture on a billboard. He bought beer for all his friends just because there's a billboard of me in Bodija in Ibadan. So my parents have been very supportive. I think even 2 of the children that I've helped, they live with them right now. And I just do my best to make sure that, they can enjoy the fruit of their labor while they're still here. And that's one thing that just keeps me going every day, right? I love my mom. She's still very supportive, and I will still do so much more for her.
Okay. I have to take questions, I'm afraid. If anybody asks about the new project, you could answer, but the time is there. Questions, anybody?
So you said something about wanting to wait before you really put a structure around what you were doing. And I personally have something I want to do, and I don't know if I should just jump into it then think about creating a structure. So what advice would you give people like me here that want to do something good, but we are not sure if we should sit down and plan for 5 million years, or we should just, next tomorrow just start and be a good person?
Tell us your name.
Okay,
It's always nice to know who's
Isaiah
talking.
Adepoju from Osun State. Okay, now my question is this. Has it ever, maybe when the children you tutor in the game of chess, when they have grown to depend on you, maybe 100 or even 200, has it ever occurred to you maybe you can't actually do it? Maybe what you're actually doing at the time was practically a ruse.
What you're experiencing is not really about creating structure. It's fear, right? It's fear that I don't know enough. I didn't know how this would pan out. And I felt that same fear, right? But I think, to be able to really do anything in the world, the first thing, and this is the one thing that differentiates the people that we regard as successful and the people that are still really struggling. And so just throw yourself into it. The reason why this is important before now building structure or, business and all of that is it would deepen your understanding of the work that you need to do, right? By making sure you have that intimate and personal experience of it. Right? What I mean is, remember when a lot of people want to do something for charity in court, just maybe go to a random school, gather some stuff, distribute it, and share pictures, and they feel good about themselves. It's a good thing, but then that personal connection is lost, right? And if you really care about doing something like that, instead of going to do that, I was just telling her, she came up to me and said she wanted to start teaching kids how to write, and introduce them to the world of books. Just take 2 girls, right? Develop a personal relationship with them. Spend time with them. So it deepens your insight of wow, this girl can do this. Wow, this is. So from there, it really strengthens your resolve, right? Because when you start, it is going to be hard, really hard. And the only thing that will keep you going is that intimate connection that you have to the project. And system and structure running in this thing might not give you that. If you want to start big and all of that. But just throw yourself into it. Start with a number that you can manage. And you can just scale up from there. That's what worked for me. So really hope it works for you too. I'll be rooting for you. Thank you. And for the second question, about helping, and I didn't really get the details.
It's really related. It's about fear. Whether at any point in time when you started, you ever go worried about people becoming dependent on you,
yes.
and then you failing them. So.
Oh, okay. That happened, right? Because when I started teaching, I was just a broke chess master, right? Then the children did something. After every training session, they started keeping letters in my pocket. Uncle Tunde, I don't have school bag. Uncle Tunde, we've not eaten since yesterday. You need to have not eaten. So, because there was this very funny story, but don't let me get into it. So what I started doing was, I took that letter and I took pictures of it. And for the first time, I wrote a story on Facebook. I think letters from children. And people saw those letters and met those needs for the children. So with time, you see that, of course, you can't help everyone. But I think one story that I heard that really helped me with managing this was, there was this little kid on the beach that was picking up this starfish fishes. He was throwing them back, and there were thousands of them, right? And he was just throwing them in one by one. And one man just walked up to him and why are you doing this? It seems futile because there are thousands of these starfishes and you can't help all of them. And the boy didn't even answer. He just kept throwing. And he said, it would matter to this one fish. And he just threw it again and he just went about this. So it would matter to that one person that you can help. No one can help everyone. Don't let that stop you from actually helping, because that one person, it could mean the world to them, and that could change everything.
Yeah.
As someone who does like similar work, mine is just like focused on the LGBTQ community. And one thing I deal with is like burnout, because you just take up your phone and then you see messages from people telling you about their life stories, like they are going through a lot in their life. And you're looking at yourself, you are going through like a big mess in your life too. So as someone who does this work, I want to know how you cope with burnout and how you protect yourself, because I still can't find an answer to that myself, how I protect myself, how I protect my mental health.
Thank
so,
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much, Blaise. Actually, Blaise is from Ikorodu. I've known him for a while now, a really long while. So I think this is one thing that we don't all have the answers to yet, because, mental health, I mean, I didn't even have mental health again, because I started experiencing third-person emotional trauma, because when you do this kind of work, you get to see poverty in its purest form and the struggles that people have. I get hundreds of messages on Twitter every day. Like I said, I became popular a year ago. So from like maybe having 100 followers to now having 250,000 followers, right? So because people see you as a nice guy, oh, this guy is helping, let me now burden him with all my problems. So I get hundreds of that every day. And whenever I just read through them, it makes me really sad, because I know I can't help everyone. And even me, myself, have my own personal struggles. Yesterday, I shared that I had this medical condition of vascular necrosis. And people were like, it's a lie. So this guy has this condition and is still doing all of this, right? So you never really know what people like me and you are dealing with, right? So I think one thing, right, is to try your best to find balance and create boundaries. This is very important, because if you don't create that boundary between the work that you do, your personal life, your relationship, family, and all of those things, it'll all get muddled up, right? And your mind goes to a very dark place. I've experienced this a lot of times, especially when fame happened and everybody, oh, Tunde this, Tunde that, Tunde this. And I just crashed. And I didn't reply anybody for like 2 weeks, right? So create those boundaries. This is what you do, and you're proud of the work you do. People will think, if they say this is what he does, why is it not helping me? People will feel entitled to your time, right, and to you, right? But you must always set those boundaries. I'm still struggling with this, right, but I think it gets easier with time.
Thank you very much. And before we wrap up, if anybody is interested in collaborating, helping you, how do they get in touch? Do you have a website? Like you said, you want to give us some of that information? Okay.
Yeah, we have a website, www.chessandslumsafrica.com. I think we're most active on Instagram, Chess and Slums Africa on Instagram, Chess and Slums on Twitter. But for me, I only use Twitter. So you can follow me, Tunde_OD. So I just share a lot of my thoughts there. So if you want to collaborate with us, you can send me an email. We're happy to, and we're very open to collaborations. Just finding, like I said, those important points of synergy, so we can reach more children. I believe in books too. The first book I ever read was Gulliver's Travels. And funny enough, after my primary school education, I couldn't speak English because I went to a Kmako school in primary school where they taught us using Yoruba. So reading Gulliver's Travel, you can imagine what it did for me. I was like, so there's a world out there, right? So we did a book drive recently in Makoko where we gave the kids Harry Potter. So we partnered, I think, with another organization that gives books. So we do those kind of things, every now and then. So if you, in whatever capacity, you can send me an email at tunde@chessandslumsafrica.com, and we'll be happy to work with you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Onakoya. Thank you. A round of applause for you.